Today's topic, interesting, odd, dense. Hear me out. Important to know, this is something I learned about second year of university, and we're gonna do a little bit of sociological theory, so bear with me, it's dense. I didn't understand it until I came back to it, but just that it took time for me to understand, and maybe that's because my teacher was nuts. Respectfully, nuts. Respectfully, that teacher, I won't name him because he's Googleable. He had tenure. Yeah. He asked some very inappropriate questions to the class and to me in front of the class. He had nefarious beliefs surrounding Girl Guides. Okay, what am I talking about? Anyways, this teacher was whack. Let me just tell you that my understanding started there, and so it's now here. That said, bear with me. Bear with me, because what the fuck was that class? I want to talk about media because we have this positive negative relationship with social media. We talk about being a creator or being a person operating in the digital age. We talk about what it's like to deal with these artificial modes of connection. And what we're going to talk about today is that, the artificialness, what that actually looks like and where that artificial feeling can come from. I'm going to base that in Jean Baudrillard's in this Simulation and Simulacra. What the fuck did I just say? Some French guy. So Baudrillard is a sociologist. He died in 2007, so a lot of what I'm talking about, he didn't even get to, see how this all played out. Almost 20 years ago that he passed, and technology has obviously exponentially increased its relevance and its pervasiveness in society, so bear with me on that too. So we're making connections with his theory that he wasn't even here to agree or disagree with. So the example that I was given in my education about simulation and simulacra, let me just say simulacra is something that is a representation of reality that is supposed to be hyper-realistic, that lacks roots in reality. For example, there's no original. That's the easiest way to say it. So the example they gave us was Disneyland. You go in the Main Street Disneyland. It's based off of something, not something that exists. It's hyper-real. You can walk through it. It looks like a town, but something is weird about it. Something's off. It's because it lacks that original self. It's a representation of something that doesn't exist in a very real way. And in a lot of ways, we have to emphasize this there's an idealized aspect to it. It's perfect. Do you see the connection I'm about to make? So we have this idea of a simulation or a simulacra, this representation of an idealized thing that lacks an original. It's curated, it's filtered, a replacement for reality. We have a sense of this maybe sense of artificial. You don't have to go to Disney to know that feeling, or like anything like that where it's very clearly just like not authentic. You can tell. Anyways, the reason I mention this is Baudrillard, when he's talking about the simulacra, he's talking about the lack of rootedness in reality. So when we talk about social media, what is it that gives it that artificial feeling? Is it the fact that none of what you're seeing is rooted in reality? Maybe. It's a part of it. And that's not all of it. I love social media. I'm an advocate for using social media for the right things. I'm an advocate for developing a healthy relationship with social media, for curating your social media in a way that makes sense. That's not creating an echo chamber, but that is maybe unfollowing your high school classmates. The point is, when we're doing when we're talking about simulacra, it's not necessarily a representation of our lives, because that would require us to have almost like a post would be a microcosm, or our accounts in general, a microcosm of our lives. We would see the good, the bad, the ugly, everything. You don't, right? You see a curated and filtered version, which is rooted in an idealization of what a life could be. And we've seen an increase in, authenticity in online spaces with specific creators talking about, their thoughts, feelings, emotions, everything that arises in their day-to-day lives, especially with the rise of people talking about things like their chronic illnesses or showing the side of maybe invisible experiences that maybe would otherwise not be seen. Helpful and unhelpful ways to do that, and like there are with everything. But the point is, it's not entirely like Disneyland. And a lot of the way that it's designed is to be that simulation, right? To be that simulacra. One of my favorite book of all time, Note, Dandelion Wine by Ray Bradbury. It's about a young boy named Douglas in the summer in the 60s, and it's all these concurrent kind of characters across town experiencing life as life is. And it's one of the most beautifully written books, in my opinion. Point is that there's a chapter and they talk about the happiness machine. One of the characters invents a happiness machine. It just doesn't work. You go in the machine, takes you all through. You can see the Eiffel Tower. You can travel through the world. You're on a magic carpet ride. All these beautiful, fun things. These things that should make you feel happy, and you love it while you're there. And then you leave, and it's gone. And you feel worse than when you entered the machine. Why? Because we know we're smart. We're not, you know, we aren't, we're bright enough beings to recognize that this is artificial, that it's not real, that we're not experiencing this for, it's like, it's not actually how the world is operating, it's not actually what we've just been through. Despite this, you know, more conscious experience, and I can be like, yes, I'm here, I'm seeing the Eiffel Tower, and blah, 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 drawing in that information on a conscious level. Unconsciously, we don't feel that way. Baudrillard, like, when I first learned this, I was like, what are you talking about, Disney World? Like, what are we saying? Like, what do you mean Disney World? But the reality is, this is really just all about curation. This is all about the way we filter, the way we present, the way we do things in a certain way to look a certain way. And when you talk about different articulations of the self, like I can lean on a million different sociological theories. I can talk about the looking glass self and the idea that we view ourselves, not how we view ourselves, but how we think other people view us. And we can talk about, again, the dramaturgical approach by Goffman. It talks about the backstage and the front stage and the way that we present because we know other people are interacting, or if there's a backstage self that involves no interaction because we're socialized, how does that matter? How do we deal with authenticity? Because simulation and simulacra rely on the understanding of what's real. But yeah, we have algorithms, we have influencers, we have input into a machine that is also designed to sell, right? If anything is, what do they say? If anything is free, you're the product. If the internet is free, you're the product, because they're selling, they're making the money on ads, right? So even if the life that you're living is real, even if the moments that you post are real, it's distorted because it's curated, it's filtered. The point is that Disney World is so successful because it's like, wow, this is utopia. The internet, you see someone's life and they're fucking flying these beautiful places and, you know, seeing these beautiful things and taking on these things and sharing on these beautiful things, and you just are like, oh, if only my life was like that. Yeah, well, only 30% of their life is like that. We know this. I'm not saying anything new, and I feel like the folks who are here going into that would be a bit of like a shallow conversation. I feel like you know that. But yeah, I also just want to mention that simulacras aren't bad. They just can feel a little weird. They just don't have that rootedness, and they can feel off if we don't recognize that they don't have that rootedness, right? Like, I think all these, we go back to the travel influencer video, they're fun. It's kind of fun. Like, I know I'm not doing that anytime soon. Kind of fun. Like, okay, fun music, okay, fun transition, cool editing, whatever. They're kind of fun. When we take away that sense of the comparison, that sense of our engagement with reality, where they sit in that. If we reduce it to this medium, which is what it is, a video for entertainment purposes, then it doesn't become that like expectation of having a reality that is connected to, because it's not, then things are more enjoyable. So I just want to point that out. It's not always bad. Like, Disneyland isn't bad. It's more just like how we engage with it and our understanding of it and our understanding of abstractions and representations and the way we engage and curate and filter and all these things. Yeah, so I think, you know, we can talk about it like it's the illusion of an actuality. So we know happiness is real, right? We expand that to be all of our lives are happy. Lacks that reality again now suddenly, right? He was talking about all this in the 80s also. His whole thing was based in the media, companies, media organizations, either government funded or independent. And he did a lot of work around the Gulf War and how the media depicted the Gulf War. And so his whole idea was that what the simulacra was an image. There was this kind of reflection of reality, or the absence of reality, or the masking of reality, or the complete lack of reality, right? This is all what the media was reproducing or representing or putting out. It was a symbol, something we're seeing, we're taking in. We're talking about degrees of propaganda, we're talking about degrees of the way that things are represented, and outside of social media, we can talk about that in a very, very real way because we have media influence, how tragedies are presented to you. I've done a lot of work in my education on representations of suffering and perceived suffering and the way that suffering looks to people, what that means, how our storytelling around suffering can change our engagement with those who are suffering and those who are coming in. And there's like, you know, layers of like the white savior complex, etc., etc. We can talk about that. If that's something you're interested in, put in the comments below. But these are the phases of the image, and so he was really based off of like what the media was doing at that time and how they were depicting these things that were going on, specifically with the Gulf War. Yeah, that you're seeing, okay, so like that's not rooted in anything, our understanding of, you know, and then on the other side, it's a reflection of what's actually going on. And the way that we articulate is kind of in those 4 categories, or phases, I guess. Reality first. The first stage of us presenting an image, a simulation of something, would be the reflection of reality. So it's really just like, it's accepting the signs of authenticity because it resembles something that's in real life. So social media can get really close to that. We can talk about when we're presenting, remember I was talking about performance of authenticity, that can be maybe like the sacramental order, where it's like, this is pretty close to something I've experienced. I can recognize that there's some validity here, some authenticity here. And this would be a great example as an image, like if I was showing you something that's going on around me, or video evidence of something occurring, obviously undoctored, you know, real. I recorded it on my phone, like my dog running down the street, and then I shared it. That would be considered like rooted in reality, right? So the order of maleficence, that's basically where it's like the denaturing of reality. So it's not a faithful representation of something, it's now an angle that is meant to look bad. So even if it's a video that is doctored, or there's a someone with authority or someone with perceived authority speaking over it and saying that something appears a certain way, this is going to sound really familiar for certain things that are occurring in the world right now, right? Where we have videos that are real, they're either being doctored or they're being presented in a way that is now given an evil appearance, or deciding the moral judgments or moral kind of status of the behaviors or things that are occurring in the image / video / presentation. Yeah, it can make things look bad. Then I mentioned something about sorcery, the order of sorcery. This is when your image, your social media, your advertisement, your anything that's presented to you as a simulacrum has the absence of what would be a profound reality. So like an example would be something that plays at appearance. So like the order of sorcery would be something more like where the presentation is that it's almost real. So like an example I saw online was like a fire alarm. So you know that like a fire drill is not a fire alarm. You know that the representation is that there's supposed to be a fire, but not there is a fire. And a simulation would be like your AI videos, where it's like there's literally no, that's not real. That's not real. Will Smith did not eat spaghetti in that video. Any of those videos. It's not real. So yeah, you're going to see this across social media. You're going to see this across news. You're going to see this across media. This is what Baudrillard was looking at. He was looking at the media. He was looking at why, how stories are presented, how stories are consumed, authenticity in conversation, in media output, social media and otherwise. And well, he wasn't talking about social media. I am talking about social media, and why that feels funky to us, and why it plays on our ethos, and why it plays on our feelings, and why how presentation matters, and the way we present things and what we present matters. Symbolism, simple storytelling, all of that is so incredibly impactful, and that's how certain things are able to come about, right? The strength of media, the strength of propaganda. It's why many things have happened in history because of stories, the strength of stories, and the strength of the abuse of authority, and yeah, maybe overestimating or underestimating, I guess underestimating the power of language and information, and the way we talk to one another. Yeah, I guess that's it. Bye.